Welcome to BB 101 course at IIT Bombay. Professor Srivastava is going to deliver his lecture in Molecular and Cellular Biology module shortly. Please mute your microphone and be ready with pen and notepad to take notes. Thank you. Welcome to BB 101 course at IIT Bombay. Please mute your microphone and be ready with pen and notepad to take notes. Thank you.
Genetics is the study of how genes bring about characteristics or traits in living things and how those characteristics are inherited. Genes are specific sequences of nucleotides that code for particular proteins. Through the process of meiosis and sexual reproductions, genes are transmitted from one generation to the next. Modern genetics had its genesis in an abbey garden, where a monk, Gregor Mendel, developed the science of genetics. Mendel performed his experiments in the 1860s and 70s, but the scientific community did not accept his work until very early in the 20th century. Mendel believed that factors pass from parents to their offspring, but he did not know of the existence of DNA. Modern scientists accept that genes are composed of segments of DNA molecule that control discrete hereditary characteristics. It might seem strange, but Mendel developed his theory of inheritance several decades before chromosomes were even observed under the microscope, and even before the significance of their behavior was understood. In this lecture, we, along with Professor Sanjeeva, will step into Mendel's garden. We will try to recreate his experiments and explain how he arrived at his theory of inheritance. We will also explore inheritance patterns more complex than those observed by Mendel in Garden Peace. Finally, we will see how the Mendelian model applies to inheritance in human variations, like the ABO blood group. Come to think of it, genetics is truly an interdisciplinary field. It is a field where the mathematical rules of probability helps us to decode the characteristic feature of an unborn child or a seed that has not germinated. So let us join Professor Sanjeeva in this journey of learning. Thank you.
Today we are going to talk about Mendelian genetics. Let me first give you an outline of today's lecture. We are going to talk about Gregor Mendel. A monk, he performed his experiments on Garden P. It was especially based on his interest that he did these experiments, which eventually led to the theory of inheritance. And you have learned about chromosomes. Then we knew about genes and DNA, but all those knowledge are not there at that time. And he made these observations much ahead of time, which is really remarkable. So first I will give you some basic definitions about Mendelian genetics and the concept of inheritance. We'll then discuss about some examples of Mendelian genetics, how his models are applicable to inheritance of human variations, and especially some of the hereditary disorders. And finally, I'll talk about how his rules are also applicable with the probability laws and how one could make more determinations and predictions based on these rules. So in the first part of my lecture, I will talk to you about the basic concepts and the definitions regarding Mendelian genetics, how Mendel performed his experiments on guardian P and discovered the principles of heredity. There are a few terminology which I think is good idea to get familiar with those before we start the actual experiments and the genetic crossing. We'll then talk about the concept of inheritance and why Mendel chose to work with guardian Ps. Mendel's law of segregation, which proposed the model for inheritance of the alleles of a single gene. And he stated that each plant has two alleles of a gene to control different properties. And one allele is inherited from each of the parents. Of course, in this case, he performed the experiment on the plant parents. And using the Punnett square, one could actually predict what could be the offsprings in the F2 generations. So we'll discuss that in the law of segregation. And then we'll move on to law of independent assortment, which essentially going to show you how to do the dihybrid cross in P and how the alleles segregate as if they are two independent monohybrid crosses. So two or more genes could assort independently. So let us start first with the few basics and the terminologies. And given that the concepts of genetics and Mendelian genetics could be better explained on the board in the classroom, I thought to overcome these issues and let us meet my avatar from the previous BB 101 class, where you can see like how these experiments can be performed by explaining in the classroom and on the board.
First start with some basics, some terminologies. When we say genotype, it means all the genetic contents of a given individual, all those genetic information, and phenotype, how actual individual looks like, their morphology, their phenotype characteristics. Now let's kind of discuss this part in context of Mendel's experiment. So Gregor Mendel, he was a scientist who did genetics experiment on the pea plant, on the garden pea. And while he was looking at pea plants, he observed there are many contrasting characteristics present in the pea plant. And he thought that those are some sort of characters which transmit from one to next generation. And for the same, now we say those heritable factors as a gene. So for the same factors, there might be different alleles which are present there. So one gene might be having different allele forms. So let's say this is a plant, a flower which is shown here is a purple colored flower. Now if a gene codes for it which is having dominant in trace, so let's say capital P. Now a recessive form of that will be a small p, right? So first I want to make you familiar with the terminologies: dominant, recessive, homozygous, heterozygous. So let's kind of do one Punnett square cross and try to understand these terminologies. By the way, in genetics it will be a good idea that you can open your own notebooks, and as we go along there will be certain problems for you to also try out. It looks very easy, but when you do it, you will be more confident. So both from the sperm and the ova, from the male and female parts, let's say now you have these gametes. So it is very straightforward, but let me kind of now ask you some terminologies here. So let's ask, how many homozygous recessive are here? Homozygous recessive. Somebody rightly mentioned one. So a small p is the recessive characteristic, right? Dominant is the capital P. So how many we have homozygous dominant here? One, capital P, capital P. how many are heterozygotes? Which are 50%, right? So 50% are heterozygous. Now what will be the genotype here? Genotype means genetic contents of this.
One is to 2:1.
Everybody agrees to him? And what will be phenotype?
3:1.
Why 3? Because 1 is dominant, right? P, capital P is dominant. So I'm sure now you already know yourself all the terminologies. So in this case here, the genotypic ratio will become 1:2:1, and phenotypic ratio, all those which are dominant, which is purple in color, is the phenotypic ratio as compared to the white, which is the recessive color, right? So this is how I think it's a good idea for us to learn the terminologies, and this is what Mendel was looking at it. But before I come to Mendel's experiment, I thought to make you familiar with the properties and these terminologies. So in this case, we got 3 purple and 1 white. Ratio was 3:1, which is phenotypic ratio, and we have 1:2:1, which is the genotypic ratio. Again, let's kind of go back and think about it at the cell level. We have already talked about it. And from the individuals, we have billions of cells. Each cell contains those nucleus. Within those, we have the DNA contents, chromosome. From those, we have the genes. What Mendel was thinking, that these genes, what we think now, is the sequence of nucleotides at a specific place which contains some of the heritable factors, which contains some information which could inherit from one to next generation. Later on, people realized that this could be termed as a gene. So now what we think is gene is what Mendel already thought that time as the heritable factors which can transmit from one to the next generation. And there could be different alleles of a given gene which are having one copy from each parent. So in this case, let's say we say the capital P and small p, right? Those are for the same color characteristic, purple or the white. So these are the 2 alleles of a given gene which are inherited from the parents. So as you can see here, the alternative variations of these genes are known as alleles. For purple flower on this chromosome or the white flower here, these are the pair of homologous chromosomes. So each organism harbors 2 copies of a given gene. A dominant allele has the effect, but recessive does not show an effect, and that's the dominant, it is known as dominant characteristic, which is going to show its properties. Now in this context of purple versus white color, if you look at this sequence of the gene which codes for the purple color versus the sequence of this gene which is for the white color, it is exactly same, just one base pair change from C to A. That's the only change here. But because of that one change, so when we talk about the sequences, we are talking about only some letters of ATGCs. They have to be in a defined manner. And sometimes just by that one change of one base can result into lot of misregulation, lot of deformities. And many times in the cancer patients, people find out lot of mutations happens. Sometimes something gets shift, some base pair shifts, and therefore the entire protein coding sequences can be changed. So in this case, a very interesting example here. You can see that because of one base pair change, this is going to make enzyme which is required to give the purple color, whereas this one has deficiency, it cannot make the enzyme for purple color, it only shows the white pattern. So same gene sequence, just with one base pair change. This is why these are alleles of that given gene, and it is going to show you the 2 different properties of purple versus white color. So now let's come and talk about Mendel, what he did and his experiment on the inheritance concept. So Mendel was doing experiments not for a job, not for the sake of a profession. He was doing these things out of his interest, and he was actually a monk who was studying the pea plant by growing them in his own backyard. And at the age of 21, he joined this Augustinian monastery. But he did not like that too much, and then he felt that he should do more advanced study in physics and chemistry. So in fact, he was much more interested to study physics, chemistry, maths, not biology. Sometime, you may not like a subject, but you might be able to still make an original contribution to the field that you will be remembered for that contribution. So after he returned back from the university, then he again joined that monastery and started teaching in a local school. And he was just growing the garden peas in the garden, and then he was making a very close observation, very meticulous notes of what is happening from one generation to the next generation. So each time when he do a cross, he will count that what is the properties he is looking at, how many seeds is growing, how many pea plants made out of it, what are their each characteristics. And because he was doing it so meticulously, he was able to come with certain mathematical numbers, and he was very astonished himself that there are many properties which are showing similar kind of patterns. So then he was able to formulate certain rules and certain laws which became Mendelian laws of genetics. So he chose only true breeding varieties. Now, does it make any sense, what is the true breeding variety and why he need to choose the true breeding variety? So Mendel chose only true breeding varieties, is a statement for his experiments which he did on the pea plants. What could be true breeding means? Somebody tried saying that no mutation. Any better explanation? Homozygous. So you are ensuring that if it was purple color coming, purple color can come out of either it can be capital P small p or capital P capital P. So you are ensuring that they are going to contain the same characteristics from one to next generation. So therefore he was choosing those characteristics and those plants which are true breeding. So in 1860 he was able to come up with the law of inheritance to define the genetic principles. So what are these heritable traits? These are heritable traits are many characteristics, like sometimes our eye colors, sometimes hair, different type of hair patterns are there, different type of eye colors. Yes.
How exactly do you choose true breeding varieties?
So ideally, if you are crossing a purple colored one with purple colored one, and you are still getting the progeny is purple colored, you are ensuring that you are doing one to next generation those crosses, and still you are getting purple colored. They are not segregating. It means those are true breeding. Does that answer to your question as well? So what are the genetic principles which accounts for the transmission of these traits? Well, many of the rules which were deciphered by Mendel as the hereditary rules. So I'm sure you can observe different patterns of hair, different colors, different type of eye colors. All of these are natural variations which are there and still keep passing from one to the next generations, and we do see that there are heritable characters, heritable variations. So how to define hereditary? People have tried to come up with different hypotheses that how to define hereditary. One hypothesis is known as particulate hypothesis, which is essentially you are playing the cards, you are shuffling the cards, and while shuffling the cards from while distribution, it is always random, right? You have no idea that how these cards are going to be distributed to different players, from one to second to third player. Genes are like that, from one to second to the third generation, probably you are shuffling the cards, and that is known as particulate hypothesis, which became more popular. So here, genes can be shuffled and passed along from the one to next generation. Another hypothesis was blending hypothesis. It means from the two parents, genes are coming and they are blended like paint. So like paint color, and they are going to give rise to a different color, like from the blue and the yellow paints, if they get blended, they will make the green color. So this hypothesis is not as popular, but these are again some hypotheses to explain how to define hereditary. So Mendel chose pea plant, of course because of availability of pea in the garden what he was, where he was in that monastery. He felt that these are the experimental system which can be done very fast, very short generation timing, and it has many characteristics, at least 7 he observed, which are derived looking from the same gene having different allelic forms. Then you can generate large number of seeds and you can make those countings. In any of the biological experiment, statistics become very important because you have to ensure that you have enough N to prove or disprove your hypothesis. And that's what was again good system here, because if you think about doing experiments in the animal system, if you'd have chosen mouse or any other animal model, then it may not have been so easy for him to grow that many number of model system to do statistics, and you cannot grow them so fast either. He was also having full control about doing the self-pollination or the cross-pollination of the pea plants for the breeding purpose. So as a result, all of these things were quite helpful for Mendel to think about doing genetic experiments. As we talked, he chose only true breeding varieties. He was crossing them to multiple generations, only selecting those which are showing the same pattern. And he selected only one characteristics at a time for his studies, which are having distinctive alternative forms. So for example, purple versus white color of the flower. That is one characteristic he tried to study. We already talked about some part of that. Flower positions, whether it's axial or terminal. Seed color, is it yellow color or green color seed? Seed shape, it can be round or wrinkle shaped. Pod shape, it can be flatted or constricted. Pod color, green or yellow. Or stem length, tall or dwarf. So many people say that Mendel was actually very lucky because in the same system he was able to get for the same gene different allelic forms and many properties which usually not present in many other plants or many other animal systems. So he was pretty lucky to randomly selected pea plant as the experimental system, and he did all the experiment which became very reproducible, and now we have very strong foundation for those laws. So these characteristic variants are called traits. So to elucidate principles of heredity, inheritance of each trait is determined by the units or the factors which we now know as a gene, which are passed on to descendants which remain unchanged. Individuals inherit one such unit from each parent, and then they transmit from the one to the next generation. So now brings to the Mendel's first law, which is law of segregation. So just to kind of brief you, this is the stamen or the male part of the this flower, pollen producing organ. This is the carpel or the female part, which is egg bearing part of the flower. So for doing this experiment, he was ensuring that for doing the crosses, it has to be very well under the control condition, just so that there is no cross pollination from one to other, different flower and different characteristics. Whatever he wanted to study, only those pollination he wanted to do that. So he cross pollinated only two contrasting and the true breeding pea varieties. So purple versus white, for example, or long versus short, or looking at the yellow versus green seed shape, etc.
Purple and white, and purple is
So his doubt and question is that what is that dominant or recessive we are looking at over there or not. So all you want to ensure here that you are only studying the homozygous kind of characteristics, because capital P or capital P small p, both are possibility for purple color. But can you choose only capital P and keep growing them further for your experiment, because then only you know that you are only talking about capital P versus small p. So then you have the good experiment to be done.
plants were true variety, true breeding. How do you make sure that the peas work?
Right. So lot of interesting ideas, of course. How he was ensuring these things, as I showed you. He was doing these pollination experiments in a very controlled condition, so that there is no cross pollination happens from the neighboring plants which can influence these characteristics. So if he is only growing the purple colored one and then he is growing white colored one separately, then only he will do the cross of those two to ensure that only the true breeding varieties cross can happen. So hybridization is the phenomenon which is mating or the crossing of two true breeding varieties, and this is known as the F1 generation or the filial generation. just get familiar with the terminology. P means parental generations, parents. F1 is the filial or the progenies. So in the first, when he did the cross, the first generation looked like all purple colored. So now let's talk about his crossing experiment, where he crossed purple versus white, two of the contrasting traits. So this is dominant color trait, the purple colored, versus white is the recessive trait. Now P generation or the parent generations, these are true breeding parents, purple or white. F1, all of them showed purple pattern, and when he again crossed them further, it distributed into the purple versus white, 3:1 kind of ratio. And he did this experiment on many of the characteristics, not only the purple and white, among all of the contrasting characteristics of different P properties which he was studying, and therefore he was able to come up with some conclusion that looks like they distribute in a very specific ratio. It is not very random phenomenon. So the F2 generation is when he is doing the F1 hybrid, self-pollinating them, and then they are resulting into large number of these seeds which he was growing further, and then able to come up with these numbers. So again what you can see, there are large number of flowers which he was counting. So 700 purple flower with 220 or so of white flower. So this is what then he felt, that these are the allelic forms of a given gene or factors which are showing the same property, but only one contrasting difference is found. This is how the cross will look like. So we already briefly talked about the Punnett square. So if this was the cross, the purple flower versus white flower, these are the gametes, capital P and small p will be derived. In the F1 generation you will have this hybrid, capital P, small p. From the male and the female parts, the egg and the sperm, you are doing this cross, and that results into this ratio of 3:1 of the phenotype. As I mentioned, he did this on many properties, not only the purple and white, also on the flower position, and the ratio was not exactly 3:1, it was 3.15 or 3.14:1, but he was finding similar kind of pattern, similar numbers in many properties. So the ratio of dominant versus recessive trait was 3:1. Now question is, if we have one purple flower, how are we going to determine the genotype, whether the purple flower is capital P or capital P small p, right? If we have purple flower, it can be two properties possible. So let's imagine two situations. One is capital P and second is capital P small p. Both of them are purple flower. If I give you some seeds and I tell you that all these seeds are going to make the flowers which will look like purple, can you determine the genotype or their genetic makeup? Are these capital P or capital P small p? So Mendel was doing this experiment himself. He was doing a lot of back crosses, and one of the cross which he observed, so please do try yourself as well. Whatever I do, you should try it out yourself. So we have two possibilities. One is capital P, second is capital P and small p. He made a cross of these two conditions with homozygous recessive, which was small p. With this cross, now if you derive yourself, so what kind of numbers can you get now in the interval ratios? In the second possibility, what is the ratio?
1:1.
So yeah, so you have 1:1 or 50% here, because these are going to show you the purple colored flowers, these are going to show you white colored flower. So if the genotype or the genetic composition of that was capital P small p, then you will see 1:1 ratio. If they were all going to show you purple colored flower pattern, it means genotype of that seed was capital P, capital P. So this is how this kind of test can be done, which is known as test cross. And test cross, keep in mind, you are doing always with the homozygous recessive. Test cross always done with the homozygous recessive characteristic. So in this case, with the two crosses which we just talked, you have possibility of capital P or capital P, small p, and you are crossing with the homozygous recessive characteristic of small p. Either all offspring were purple colored or 50% of them were purple and 50% of them were white colored. I think it's good to be more attentive in genetics lecture. It's not only interesting but also a lot of questions are going to come based on that for sure. And as long as you know how to make these crosses Punnett squares, you can very easily do these kind of questions. So please make sure that you are trying all of these things yourself. Whenever we say that make this cross, do try out yourself. Looks very easy sometimes, but still try to do that. So breeding an organism of unknown genotype with a recessive homozygote is known as test cross, which can reveal the genotype or the genetic composition of that particular organism. So what we can conclude from this section so far, that the law of segregation suggests that genes have alternative forms or the alleles. There are two alleles for a given trait which is heritable, and those can get separated during the gamete formation. It also explains that the ratio is approximate 3:1, and a trait may not show up in the individual, but you can still obtain that information from the test cross, which actually can be passed from one to the next generation. That brings us to the second law of Mendel, which is law of independent assortment. Mendel, when he was doing the experiments, of course he did not make the law that time. So he was doing the experiments, he was making those observations. After looking at many experiments giving the same ratios, then only he was able to come up with certain hypothesis that this particular thing is working well, and now this can become a rule. So in terms of looking at this now, he started thinking about, earlier we studied only one characteristic, one gene and two allelic forms of that. Can we now start looking at two genes, two different properties, different allelic forms? So for example, seed color and seed shape. This is a round seed and yellow color. So we are looking at two properties now, right? And that is known as dihybrid. When we are talking about studying two traits simultaneously, that is known as the dihybrids. Or you are talking about a seed which is green in color, but either it is round or it can be wrinkled. So you are looking at two different properties here, and to denote them you can say it is capital Y, capital R, or small y, small r, small r. So although I mentioned to you already that Mendel derived his law as a law of independent assortment, but let's assume the possibilities that what could have been either dependent or independent. So for doing this experiment, from the gametes from the parent generations resulted into F1 generation, which is this hybrid, capital Y, capital R, small r. So now let's assume that Mendel was not sure that what should be hypothesis. Are the two properties which we are studying at the same time, they are dependent or they are independent? I am sure by now you know the answer, it is independent, but let's say that he was not sure that what should be the property. So from this seed, which is the hybrid, now we have capital Y, capital R, small r. There can be two possibilities. Either the gametes which are derived are having the capital Y, capital R, small y, small r, only this kind of characteristics are getting distributed, or it can have multiple ways of distribution, capital Y, capital R, small y, small r, and additionally we have capital Y, small r, and small y, capital R. So there are two possibilities now, right? Can you please start doing the cross yourself and tell me that what will be the answer from these crosses? So Mendel's law were actually based on the result which he obtained, but hypothesis is something, when you are making hypothesis you have no idea that what the results will be. So at that time, you are essentially just exploring all possibilities. It could be multiple characteristics might be depending on each other, or they might be independent of each other. Both are possibilities, right? So if these are the characteristics, so now how best to do the crosses and derive the conclusion out of it. If you do the crosses, what will be, if this is the gametes, then what will be your progeny look like? Please do that fast. You have to derive all the, no, this is not correct. For this one, you have to have all of these gametes, because from the male and female both, you have to derive. So I think looking at things sometimes looks much easier, but when you start doing yourself, then you realize that you can make mistakes easily, right? All right. So just to save time, if you do this particular cross here, so male and female gametes, which you have capital Y, capital R, and small y, small r, if that was the case, then the ratio could have been 3:1. But what he found was something different. He found the ratio as 9:3:3:1. So the round yellow, round green, wrinkled yellow, and wrinkled green, they are showing phenotypic ratio as 9:3:3:1, which was different observation than what he was actually assuming. If the characteristics were depending on each other, the ratio could have been 3:1, but because they are independent, they are sorted independently, then the ratio observed was 9:3:3:1. So each pair of alleles segregate independent of other pair of alleles during the gamete formation. So from this section we can conclude that the second law of inheritance of Mendel was observed based on the studying two characteristics at a time, and he stated that two or more genes, they can be assorted independently, and each pair of these alleles segregate independently during the gamete formation. After crossing the experiment, then he observed the ratio, which is 9:3:3:1. So Mendel, when he proposed these laws and brought those calculations, those numbers, he published in a small journal, and that time, as I mentioned, he was not doing these things for just doing research for and science from publication point of view. He was doing these things out of his own curiosity, and he was not biologist per se. He was just doing these observations based on his interest of observing the nature and the plants. So he was not very popular. Nobody knew about his findings. He published already his result in 1866, but people were not aware of what Mendel did, and it just got published in some journal which nobody noticed much about it. Many scientists over the period in 19th century independently they were working on different genetic laws. Also they were looking at Drosophila or the fruit fly as a model system to study the inheritance, and interestingly they were coming with the conclusions which were exactly same what Mendel already made several years ago. So these three scientists, Hugo de Vries, Eric Schumacher, and Karl Correns, they made the same conclusions what Mendel already made in 1860s. So then Mendel was kind of, people started recognizing his contribution, and in many ways the Mendelian laws were rediscovered, because now people have much more confidence that what Mendel has proposed was very accurate, and three independent scientists have confirmed their findings, confirmed his findings. So now everybody started, recognizing and appreciating Mendel's contribution, and eventually now he is recognized as the father of genetics.
So just to summarize the first part of the lecture, we learned about how Gregor Mendel performed his experiments on garden peas and proposed his theory of inheritance. We learned about law of segregation, which suggests that genes have alternative forms or the alleles, and that we discussed in the monohybrid crosses, where we discussed how the 3:1 ratio of F2 phenotypes could be observed. We then learned about law of independent assortment, which is based on the dihybrid cross, and it stated that two or more genes, they assort independently, and each pair of alleles segregate independently during the gamete formation. And we observed that the phenotypic ratio is 9:3:3:1. Unfortunately, Mendel could not get recognition of his work in his lifetime, but after his death, independent scientists rediscovered Mendelism and reconfirmed his finding. So I hope by now things are clear to you that how Mendel performed his experiment just out of his sheer interest, and sometime those observations could be very fundamental, and based on his contribution, he is known as father of genetics. So let's move on to the second part of the today's lecture, which is a few examples of genetics, especially where Mendelian laws are applicable. So many complex human traits, they follow Mendelian patterns of inheritance. And it will be interesting for you to observe that how these different traits are obeying Mendelian's law of inheritance. Also, there are various complex inheritance patterns and different genetic disorders. Even they also follow these patterns. How one could extend these understanding of Mendelian genetics, which is for the single gene, and try to discuss that with the complete dominance, incomplete dominance, and codominance phenomenon. Also, at the end, we will talk about ABO blood grouping, which is an example of multiple alleles. And I'll show you a laboratory-based demonstration of how to perform the blood testing. So the blood grouping, in fact, it was very interesting that even in the classroom of BB 101, the large classrooms, we used to do these tests and randomly ask some students to come and do their own test. And, genetics really works always correct. So students were very happy to see that what a blood grouping they were told from the technicians or pathologists. Now those are actually accurate, and they can just do it, in a couple of seconds time, just by looking at antigen antibody reactions. So we will be giving you at least a glimpse of that.
So there are many examples of Mendelian genetics which we can study, and I must say that the Mendelian rules, Mendelian laws were made based on the pea plants with very limited conditions. So we had one gene, two alleles, and we are talking about two genes and four alleles kind of properties. But many times when we talk about human characteristics, things are much more complicated, much more complex. And that time, the characteristics are governed from many genes, polygenic in nature. So it may not be always true that every inheritance pattern is going to follow Mendelian's law. It may not be always true. But there are many human traits which still follow Mendelian rule. And people have done the pedigree analysis. It means in the same family, if you look at your grandfathers and the grandsons, their entire properties, are there certain characteristics which are appearing and disappearing and reappearing kind of stuff. So that is a pedigree analysis when you are looking at a family history for a particular trait, and then you are assembling that information and trying to derive some sort of family tree or pedigree information from those traits. So many of the human traits, for example, one is known as widow's peak, which is something shown here. So this property is actually, the sharp hairline is known as widow's peak, which is observed in many families, and these are dominant traits which are actually being followed in those women, and they are always following the Mendelian ways of inheritance, Mendelian laws of inheritance. There are certain characteristics, like if you look at the earlobe, in this case here, so this is attached earlobe or this is a free earlobe, you will see some variations like this. And then these are some of the recessive characteristics which are also found in some family, and they also obey Mendelian laws of inheritance. So, but as I mentioned, the inheritance patterns are sometimes very complex. They are not as simple as just looking at a pea plant and one gene at a time. They are governed from many genes and many complex information. Those are polygenic in nature. So Mendel in some way was actually lucky, because he was only looking at one thing at a time, and then he derived his conclusions based on those relationship between genotype and phenotype. Ideally is not as simple as just looking at their one genetic content. So I'll show you a couple of examples where the dominant and recessive things may not be exactly following the same trend. So when we have the Mendelian kind of inheritance of complete dominance and recessive, that is known as complete dominant characteristics. Sometimes we have incomplete dominance, the phenotype of F1 hybrids. They are somewhere in between the phenotypes of the two parental phenotypes. Or the codominance, it means there are two dominant alleles, they are resulting into a third property which is not exactly same like any parents. So those are codominant allele or codominant properties. Are some of these dominant alleles, they are for a particular characteristics always more common than the recessive alleles. People have also looked at some of the frequency of dominant alleles. In this case, look at the hand. So this is one of the dominant characteristics, especially lot of child born in US, they are having polydactyly, multiple fingers, more than 5. So this extra finger or toes, that is one of the characteristics which is example of polydactyly. The recessive alleles in this case is the normal appearance with the 5 digits, and is far more prevalent than the dominant allele. So is this because of natural selection? I think some of these we will discuss in the context of evolution, but just wanted to highlight that there are many variations in the human population available where one could start thinking about genetic principles. And some of these things one could think about at the single gene level, and some of those are derived. So we have seen in Mendel case, it was purple versus white and always only purple in the F1 generation, and then they segregate again as a purple versus white. But there are examples like a flower which is a red snapdragon. That flower, if you do a cross, so in this case you have, these are the parental gametes. One is a red colored flower, one is white colored flower. When you are doing the cross from these gametes, it is forming RW, which is neither red nor white, and it shows the pink colored gametes in the hybrid. And now when they do the cross from this, so you got one red, one white and two pink. Alright. So this is not following the Mendelian law of dominance, right? It is not showing you that 3:1 pattern. At the phenotype level, we have ratio which is 1:2:1. In the Mendelian case, when we saw the law of segregation, where you observe this number 1:2:1? At the genotype level, right? When these numbers are shown, where these ratios denote genotypic ratios in which context, or where it can be phenotypic ratio. So for example, in the case of incomplete dominance, it is phenotypic ratio which is 1:2:1. If you have done the cross of the red flower versus white flower, the gametes which were produced from the F1 generation of the pink flower, you did again a cross of that in the F2 generation. You have again sperm and eggs from these two, RW, you are doing cross, one red, one white and two pink flowers were generated. The phenotypic ratio here becomes 1:2:1. Another characteristic which is very interesting is albinism, where there is some deficiency of the colors which gives you the black shade, and those individuals are having white hair and no pigmentation is one of the lacking characteristics in those individuals, which is derived from some genes which are recessively inherited, and they are going to only show up in the homozygous individuals. So those individuals who are carrying it both small a, only they are going to show you the albinism property. So let's take, and please do a cross yourself now. If there are parents who look normal, but they are the carriers of this albinism property. So parents are looking normal, but they might be carrying the alleles of this property of albinism, this disorder. So they have normal phenotype. What would be the probability of their children as a carrier for this particular disease, as well as how many of them will be totally albino? I think genetics question is always good idea that things look very simple, but do it. Just make the crosses, think about what should be genotype, how it should denote the gametes, and then the cross will become very simple. Both the parents are carrier. So it means the parents' genotype will be what? Heterozygous it will be. So they are looking normal in the appearance, but they are heterozygous, they are carrier. And when there is a one recessive character, it is not going to show until it becomes homozygous recessive. So now when you do the cross of the 4 child from this family, there is a possibility only one of them will become albino and 2 will be actually carrier. So 3 of them are looking normal, but of those 3, 2 will be the carrier who will carry these genes again to the next generation. This is how one could study these things in a given family and then try to make some sort of pedigree analysis that what could be the pattern of that. And you see these kind of pattern of albino child that who are looking white, lack of pigmentation in these child. Let's think about some more complex properties and something which is much more related to all of us. Think about the blood groups. I'm sure everybody would have gone to some clinic to know that what their blood groups are, right? These blood groups are derived from the same gene but multiple alleles. And these alleles, so let's say I'm sure you are aware of there are 4 different type of blood groups, A, B, AB or O, right? And these nomenclature, these names comes from some sugar, some carbohydrates which are present on the RBCs. So on the red blood cells, sometimes this carbohydrate A is present and that type of blood is known as blood group A, or carbohydrate B is present, that is known as blood group B, or both of them are present, that is known as AB, or if both of them are absent, that is known as O type. So let's kind of start putting this in genetic terms. So we are saying that A and B are dominant traits in this case, right? We are talking about multiple alleles of a given gene. So for A blood group, capital I, capital A is how you are denoting the A blood group. B blood group, capital I, capital B. When it is a small form of allelic form, you are saying it is small I, which is none of the carbohydrate is present. In this case, A carbohydrate is present in the A blood group and B carbohydrate present in the B blood group. Now, if you go further, you can start thinking about 2 possibilities over there. When we think about blood grouping or any dominance law for that matter, even if we have I capital A and a small I, that will still appear a dominant trait. Or just think about the same logic what we thought for purple and white colors, right? Or you have I capital A and I capital A, that is also dominant and that is also going to show you the A blood type trait. In the B blood groups, we have I capital B or I capital B and a small I. In case of O blood group, we have both small i's, and in AB we have I capital A and I capital B. So it just gives you feel that in the blood groups we have, on one hand we are looking at what type of carbohydrates are present on the RBCs, which is A, B, AB or O, and it is possible only one of the copy is actually dominant, one of them is recessive, still it is going to show you the dominant property, or in this case both have to be recessive. So this is how in genetic terms you can think about all type of blood groups. Now what is interesting that people can actually derive the blood groups by doing certain reactions based on antigen and antibodies. And interestingly, we are going to perform that experiment in the class today shortly, where you can challenge biology and concepts that it always works true or not. If you already know your blood group, and we'll take your blood group and we'll do those reactions and try to tell you what your blood groups are with a very simple logic of how an antibody reacts with an antigen, and if that reaction happens, then you will see some sort of agglutination or some particles will be formed. So just continuing on this, let's kind of look at this situation where if the parents are containing different alleles which are A, B and O type, and just imagine the way we have done the normal process. So parent alleles are A, B or O, and then you do another, so father and mother both are having A, B and O alleles. Can you do that cross and then say that what are all possible genotype of those children for the blood groups possible, right? This is how you will see. So you can now find out from this cross that what are the possible blood groups of these children. We have 3 antibodies. Let's say when we add antibody A, that antibody A is going to react with antigen A. So in case of blood group A or in case of blood group AB, you are going to see this reaction, agglutination reaction to happen, which is going to make these kind of particles. It will not happen for the O or the B. Now when you add antibody B, you will see the reactions happening either with the B or with the AB. So far we are not able to tell is that positive or negative, it's just whether it's A or B, right? So that information you can get, or if it is not reacting with both antibodies, then you can say it is O. If it is reacting with both of them, then you are saying it is AB. This is how you derive these 4 just by looking at the reactions of 2 antibodies. Now if you want to look at are the research factor positive or negative, so you are adding third antibody, anti-D, and that antibody if it shows reaction positive, then you say it is O positive or O negative, or A positive, A negative, B positive, B negative, AB positive, AB negative.
Blood group typing is a type of experiment in which we determine the blood group of an individual. Karl and Steiner discovered this ABO blood grouping system, which is based on the fact that the surface of RBCs are covered with glycoproteins which are known as antigens. So according to this system, there are 4 types of blood groups: blood group A, blood group B, blood group AB and blood group O. Here we are going to conduct an experiment in which we are going to determine blood group of this blood sample. This is a pipette and I am going to pour 3 drops of blood on this slide. This is anti-A. I am going to pour 1 drop of anti-A to the first drop of blood. Anti-B to the second drop of blood. And anti-D, which is used to determine the Rh antigen on the blood surface. I am going to add anti-D on the third drop of blood. Now I am going to mix these. We have to make sure that while mixing we use a new toothpick each time. In this sample, anti-B shows agglutination. This means the blood group is B. Anti-B forms agglutination with the surface glycoproteins of this blood group. Also we can see agglutination in the third spot, which denotes that this blood group is Rh positive. So as a whole, this blood is B positive.
So to summarize the second part of today's lecture, we discussed about various human traits which follow Mendelian's pattern of inheritance. Even one could use the pedigree analysis to locate the genotype of individuals, or even one could also make the predictions about the offspring Are they going to be normal? Are they going to carry some of these factors or the traits? These inheritance patterns are often more complex than what Mendelian genetics, explain briefly, but most of the time those laws are quite applicable. One could always extend those rules and also look at some variations of those, and especially complete dominance, incomplete dominance, and codominance. And we also learned about ABO blood grouping. I hope it was clear to you that a simple and elegant way of antigen-antibody reactions could show that how the different type of blood grouping works, and blood testing could now be very simple concept for all of you. So finally, in the last section and the last few minutes of lecture, let's talk about how genetics rules are applicable with the probability rules, especially the probability rules of addition and multiplication can be used to solve the complex genetics problems. I'm sure you're going to enjoy that rather than drawing the complex Punnett square, one could simply use the law of probability and derive the possibilities of F2 offsprings. So a dihybrid cross is ideally equivalent to 2 or more independent monohybrid crosses, which can happen simultaneously, as we have learned. So to calculate the chances of the offspring genotype, each character is first considered separately, and then the individual probabilities could be multiplied from that. So Mendel's law could be used to predict the possible outcomes of mating, as well as it can also accurately assess the genetic risk factors, especially for the diseases, to find out if the prospective parents are the heterozygous carrier of a recessive allele. So these things are going to be very interesting, and I'm sure with your mathematical abilities, you should be able to perform these tests and derive these probabilities very easily now.
Discussing about genetics and genetics rules, and we were talking about law of independent assortment, where we discussed that how in dihybrid crosses, even when you are studying two different properties, those properties are getting segregated independently. And I had asked you to make some Punnett square, and I'm sure you are all trying to make those 16 boxes and trying to show that what could be the gametes will look like, but you must have realized that while it can be done, but it is not something which is very easy to do, just because you have to make too many gametes and you have to write a lot of details for them. So all of you are having mathematics and engineering background. Why not use probability rules to find out what is the probability of each type of those gametes are? And genetics in many ways is like mathematics. It's just based on rationale. If you just simply forget about is that red versus white or purple versus white, if you just forget those color names or just don't think that is what object we are talking, so you are talking about two properties, you are deriving the gene and alleles for those properties, and then you are using some mathematical rules to see that how they can transmit from one to next generation. So a good way of thinking about dihybrid crosses and multiple properties is to use probability rules. So that's what I'll talk first. So let's just first think about rules of probability, and I'm sure for this audience I don't have to teach too much what probability is. You are measuring the things in the scale of either 0 or 1, and just imagine that from egg and sperm you are deriving the gametes, and those gametes, let's say if you have RR or capital Y small y, those are segregating. So then they're splitting into 50%, half and half. Now from those gametes, if you see this case here, you have half capital R and half a small r from the sperm and from the eggs, and now you are deriving those gametes. So you have 1/4 probability of capital R, 1/4 probability of small r, and half the probability of heterozygotes, which is capital R and small r. So if you just think about all the crosses in this kind of probability basis, then I think many of the genetics problems which will be asked to you will become much simpler. Of course, you can still cross check something with Punnett square, but you'll find probability rules much simpler way of deriving those. So in the law of independent assortment, we talked about that each of the gene for contrasting pair, those alleles segregate independently in the next generation. And then we have discussed that these are the dihybrids or even multi-hybrids, various characteristics which are there. They are passing from one to next generation, but they are actually following their own independent route. We have discussed this example of capital Y small y and capital R small r. This particular heterozygote having two different type of monohybrid crosses when you are talking about two properties, the seed shape as well as the seed color. So seed color, capital Y small y, and the capital R small r can be your seed shape. So irrespective of these R or YY, I'm sure you can use any nomenclature for these. So this is what the results we have seen last time. This is what I asked you to derive, and based on this particular phenotypic ratio, which is 9:3:3:1, we concluded that when Mendel was doing the experiment, he thought and hypothesized two possibilities, whether the gametes could be assorting dependent way or independent way. If it was dependent way, then probably ratio would have been 3:1, but just because in this time he found 9:3:3:1, then it was considered that they are assorting independently, and you are asked to make these chart using the Punnett square. So now let's think about the same cross, and then let's see, can we use the probability rules, and then those can be used to derive these gametes, right? So let's think about two monohybrid crosses. In all the genetics class, it will be a good idea that all of you are active, you are having your notebooks and pen in the class. Even the simple thing which we do, you are doing it, and sometime I will leave it half the way and I'll ask you to complete. So please start making some crosses. So let's take two properties, let's say seed shape and seed color. So we are doing two separate monohybrid crosses for seed shape and seed color. Very straightforward. I think we got these gametes, which is half, 50% are in the heterozygotes, and then we have 1/4 of the homozygous, dominant or recessive. So now let's think about the how best we can use these numbers now for calculating the probabilities. So now if you multiply these individual probabilities for RR and YY, so you can start deriving these gametes, what will be their probability. The first one 1/16. Alright, so what you can see now that if you would have done Punnett square, probably it was much more tedious for you to fill that Punnett square. But now if you are looking at individual probabilities first and then you are multiplying those, so now you can derive each of the gamete, what will be the genotypes and what is their probability in the F2 generation. So I think in this way, if there are different properties are given to you for a dihybrid cross, then you can first try to derive their individual crosses and then use those calculations and probability values to derive the dihybrid cross probability. Now the questions which will be asked will be something like this, that what could be probability of the F2 genotype for a gamete which is capital Y, capital Y, capital R, capital R. So to find out this one, you have to see these individual values and then you have to calculate, and then you can tell that this is probably 1 by 16 probability you have for this particular genotype to appear. Same for the next question, where it is 1 by 8 probability for capital Y, small y and capital R, capital R. So this is very straightforward way. I'm sure now you are much more familiar and confident that the same type of things can be done using Punnett square as well as using probability rules. So now we can just simply compare the two which we have learnt. This is one which we have seen in the Punnett square, and now these individual values which we have derived from the probability rules, and both of them are going to show the same ratio of law of independent assortment 9:3:3:1. Now I think let's have some small simple questions for you. We talked about some albino child in the family. In this case, if we have both the parents are heterozygous for the albinism, what will be the probability of the child being albino? Straightforward. Let's think a little bit a different terminology now. Another disease which is achondroplasia, a type of dwarfism. In that disease, if both one of the parent is homozygous recessive and other is heterozygous, please do that. And you can use any of the nomenclature for doing these particular type of crosses. Right, correct answer, half. So you have half the child or progeny who will be dwarf, and this is actually one of the cases. Dr. Mike N, who was a scientist, and he himself was suffering from this disorder of achondroplasia. So these disorders one would see many times in the human population, and when you investigate that what could have been the cause, what could have been the family history, after looking at those analyses, then you may realize that some of these things are actually already part of those pedigree and those particular genetic inheritance of those families. So I'm sure now you are kind of familiar with this cross. I think I had seen one hand up a while ago for a question. I can now take a question. All right.
Multi-hybrid cross. So what's it supposed to be?
What does that mean?
Many capital R, small r. Apart from that, is there something else?
So he is just trying to clarify that what this multi-character crosses means, and what this statement ideally how to simplify this. So if we are looking at different properties, if you think about classical Mendelian experiment, we were talking about one property at a time, tall versus short. The flower looks like purple versus white. So we are looking at one property, one characteristic at a time. Now if you look at multi-characteristics, different properties at the same time, those could be dihybrid if you are looking at two properties, could be trihybrid, which can be three properties. Now how those particular properties are getting inherited from one to next generation. So that is what the statement meant. And then I showed you that two properties we are doing the dihybrid cross, and in which way we can split this particular cross into two monohybrids, and then we can derive this.
All right, so to summarize the last part of today's lecture, we learnt about probability rules of addition and multiplication. They can be simply used to solve the complex genetics problem. Alternatively, one could also use the Punnett square. A dihybrid cross can be very much simplified as if there are two monohybrid crosses are happening, and one could calculate the chances of those offspring genotypes looking at individual probabilities of each of these traits and then multiply those. Mendel's law could also be used for predicting the risk factors and also trying to find out how in a family somebody might be carrier for a given disease, what could be probability of a prospective parents if they're heterozygous carriers of recessive allele for them to carry this disease and to transfer in their children. So many of these interesting genetic tests are actually very simple and easy if you can start following these family pedigrees at how these traits are being transferred from the parents to the offspring, and then one could actually make predictions in the same family in the upcoming offspring that what will be possibilities of carrying those traits. Just to give the overall summary of today's lecture, we discussed some very interesting concept of Mendelian inheritance and how simple and elegant experiments performed on the garden pea really led to the concepts of law of segregation and law of independent assortment. We also discussed that how various Mendelian genetics examples, how his models are actually very much applicable even for understanding human variations and different hereditary disorders. And finally, we talked about you can make the the genetic cross-sales understanding very easy by applying them with the probability rules. So this is the chapter which has been used from your book Campbell to make this particular lecture. I hope you will be able to practice some of these crosses yourself, and you will find genetics quite interesting and easy to perform. Next lecture is going to be continued in the same theme when we are going to now talk about chromosomal and molecular basis of inheritance. Thank you very much.